Alright, cool. Welcome. Making another video on how to find the difference quotient, or better yet, evaluate it. I'm actually using this example that we did in class, but I just kind of rewrote it. So if you're not in my class, this is how you figure it out. So if we have a function g of x, which is equal to negative 4x squared plus 9x, and it says evaluate the difference quotient, this is how you do it. First, you need to figure out what the difference quotient is. Well, the difference quotient is just this. So if it says evaluate the difference quotient for something, it just means to evaluate this. G of x plus h minus g of x, all of that over h, which actually comes up way later in math for another reason that calculus will help you explain. Actually use limits with it, and it helps you with a derivative. But for now, we're just evaluating the difference quotient, and we're going to have to simplify a bunch of stuff. So if you're writing this on paper, you're going to need some room there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we need to figure out what this equals. We're going to evaluate that with this function here. So function notation, I already made a video on it. When you have something inside the parentheses, in this case x plus h, I need to replace the x in the original equation with that. And then in this one, I don't need to replace anything because it's just x the way the original one is. So this is the same as this. So we'll do something to this one and subtract the original, and then we'll divide the whole thing by h. And what will happen is we'll need to simplify a bunch of stuff. All right, so let's just dive right in. And when you write this, make sure you start off by writing this first, just to keep it neat and organized. Then you have your equal sign, and then your equal signs go all the way down, and just nice and easy, right? All right, so we got g of x plus h. That's what we're doing here. So that's the first thing I'm going to do. So negative 4. Now I see an x, so I'm going to replace it with x plus h, just like you would if it was a number inside there, squared. And then don't forget, a lot of times people will just stop here and they'll forget there's another part of the original equation here. So plus 9, and a lot of times they'll just forget to replace here. Replace that. And then we are, let's see, yeah, did I write that? Okay, so then we're subtracting from that g of x, and g of x is this. Now, if I just write like this, negative 4x squared plus 9x, that's actually wrong, because this looks like we're just subtracting this piece, and this one is just by itself. But I need to subtract the whole thing, because it says subtract all of g of x. So to get all of g of x, I'm going to put it in parentheses. This is a little trick there, and we'll come back to that. I actually specifically chose this problem because it's got all these negative signs. So then we need the denominator. I'm going to divide the whole thing by h. All right, good so far. Moving forward, and I'm just going to move my paper up. So now I need to, that's step one, and now I need to continue on. So I'm going to have my equal sign here. I guess you could rewrite this whole thing. This all comes down, but this is good enough for now. This equal sign comes down, and I'm going to work on simplifying it from left to right, top to bottom, right? So I've got negative 4 times the quantity x plus h squared. And this is important. Some mistakes that people would make would be to distribute this too soon, or they might just say that this x plus h squared is x squared plus h squared, which is incorrect. X plus h squared, that quantity squared, is actually turns out to be, if you bring the negative 4 down, it's x squared plus 2xh plus h squared. All right? And I still have those parentheses on there, okay? And then I'm going to keep going across. So plus 9 times x plus h would be 9x plus 9h, right? And now I need to subtract this whole thing. So when I subtract negative 4x squared, that's subtracting a negative, so it's plus 4x squared. And then this is subtracting 9x, so this is minus 9x. And so I'm able to get rid of the parentheses there, and now these are all standalone terms, so to speak. Divide the whole thing by h, right? Moving on down. Hopefully I didn't do any magic tricks yet for you. Whoops, sorry about that. The negative 4 now needs to be distributed to each term. So negative 4x squared. Negative 4 times 2xh is negative 8xh. Negative 4 times h squared is negative 4h squared. And then we're just continuing to write the rest of it. So plus 9x plus 9h minus 4x squared minus 9x. So hopefully you appreciate, on some level, how much time I took to write all those out. I didn't skip a bunch of steps, because look at all these terms that you could get confused, and just one negative sign is going to make your whole answer wrong. So if you're doing this out of a textbook, and you're like, my answer's always wrong, I don't know if I know how to do it. You might be doing it right, but maybe you're not taking care with like the distribution of a negative sign or something like that. Are you writing neatly? Do you have enough paper? So double check that stuff. Last step, hopefully, is you look at the whole numerator, and this, what usually happens is a bunch of stuff cancels. So we got negative 4x squared, and we've got I just explained that. I forgot to bring this positive 4x squared down. So I copied that wrong. I had done it originally right, and then I just copied it wrong. It's very easy to make that mistake. Probably because I was thinking about making that statement beforehand. Regardless, I knew that something needed to cancel, because usually something cancels in here, and you end up being able to simplify it. So we've got a negative 4x squared and a positive 4x squared, so those two cancel out. They add together to 0. And then we've got a positive 9x here and a negative 9x there. All right, and so we're left with negative 8xh, negative 4h squared, and 9h. So these three terms are on the numerator, and I'm going to reorganize them. So I'm going to have negative 4h squared, and I'm going to put negative xh, and then what do we got? Plus 9h, and all of that is over h. So I've simplified a bunch, and you might think, oh, I'm done. Not quite. Usually the last step, if you notice, there's a common factor of h within the numerator. So I'm going to factor that out. So if I pull an h out, negative 4h minus 8x plus 9. So all I did there is anti-distribution. It's really called factoring out. So if I just distribute the h through, I just get back to the original. So this numerator here is logically equivalent to the one I had above it. All right, so now I have an h factor and an h factor here, or I'm sorry, something that cancels. H divided by h is 1, right? Okay, so then I'm just left with negative 4h minus 8x plus 9. And that is your simplified version. So that is the simplified version of the difference quotient. This will come up in the end of pre-calculus. It'll come up in the beginning of calculus, depending on how your course sequence goes. So hope that helped.